Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
I had to put on my reaching hat. Hear me out.
So, Ian, can you just kind of explain the background about how this document came to be?
So the whole purpose of the document was to send to Melanie's lawyers so that they knew what I had gone in and told the FBI. So I told Melanie, it was December 19th, I think, that I'd been talking with the police, and a little later I told her I'd been recording her. And when I wrote that document, the whole purpose was, it was after I told Melanie I'd been working with the FBI and the police that I wrote this. The whole idea is to protect her. Her lawyers need to know exactly what I said, how I said it. And that's how I wanted to present it to them, is these are the fears that I shared with them, that Melanie had shared with me.
Thank you for clicking. So today I want to talk about my favorite statement. I reference Ian Pawlowski's statement a lot. And I've referenced little excerpts here and there, but I've never I didn't dive deep, okay, into the statement itself on its own. And I have been having this idea of doing this video for a while now, but there is always something else going on. But during Chad's preliminary hearing, I kept thinking of Ian Pawlowski's statement. It is the most underrated piece of evidence, I believe, because we had this way early on before a lot of things were revealed, and everything that was revealed afterwards comes back to this. Before I begin, you guys know I have to give my thanks. What's with all this? To my returning subscribers, old and new, you guys are the best. I know some of you may be getting tired of me doing this, but I'm never gonna stop. I have to thank you guys. Literally, without you, it would just be me posting a video that nobody cares about. So, if you are new here, hi. This is me. I wear a tinfoil hat and I talk about true crime and conspiracies. I am hoping for a Reynolds Wrap heavy duty sponsorship. I actually got some questions about the tinfoil hat, like whether I use generic or how to do it or a tutorial about it. And first of all, I use Reynolds Wrap heavy duty. You cannot use anything, I mean you can, but this is held up. And second of all, I don't know how to do a tutorial because this is the first and only tinfoil hat I've ever made, and I made it in the kitchen cracking up way back when I had like 100 subscribers, and I did a video about my malachite theory. It was like the first time I ever came up with the theory, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. I sound like I should have a tinfoil hat. And then my brain was like, well, we have a tinfoil hat. Well, we have tinfoil, why don't you make a hat? And then I was like in the kitchen cracking up, making the tinfoil hat, and thus this was born. But anyway, nobody came here for my life story, so let's dive in. So let's start at the very beginning, and I will allow Ian and Melanie to explain how they met and how they got married and everything like that in their own words.
I grew up in Southern California, and I got married in 2010, moved to Idaho in 2011 with my ex-wife, Natalie. We had 2 kids together. Natalie and I hit our 9th anniversary, and on our 9th anniversary, she asked for a divorce. And so we worked our way through that. That started in March of 2019. Got all wrapped up in July. So, I downloaded some dating apps and found Melanie on one of them and asked her on a date that day. I went to Mackenzie River.
Sorry, what month was this, Ian?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this was November.
So Melanie, you had moved to Rexburg.
Yeah, the first week in November, I moved to Rexburg.
So you both were already in the same town together.
Right.
We were across the street from each other.
Yeah, we actually found that out.
And you didn't know that?
We didn't even know, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We spent the next, 2 days basically just talking constantly.
And then you got married shortly thereafter, right?
Correct. So I came down with my 2 children to have Thanksgiving with my family, and she came down a few days later. And on her way down, she was talking about how she didn't have anybody to go to Thanksgiving with, and so I invited her to come be with my family. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing, and so she showed up, and my kids immediately fell in love with her.
You guys were married shortly thereafter, right after Thanksgiving?
Right, yeah, November 30th.
November 30th.
We were. It was really fast.
Now, were Alex and Zulema married did you guys have a joint wedding or was that separate?
You know, the coincidence of us picking the day right after them wasn't planned or anything. It was just what happened. And
this document was written after December 2019. And after Ian told Melanie that he was basically spying on her for the feds, literally. At this point, it's known that the children are missing. Chad and Lori are on the run in Hawaii at this time. And basically Melanie and Alex were left to pick up the pieces. And as we know, right when Lori and Chad fled, Melanie and Alex got married together, like a day apart. Alex was a witness, they changed their last names, and yada yada yada. So now that we know when this happened, let's talk about what's actually in the statement. Number 1, multiple probations. A, minimum of 9 mortal lives to become exalted, but more to become gods. B, after 2 mortal lives, you can choose to sign a light contract or a dark contract. Choosing light or dark isn't permanent. C, you can choose not to be reborn if you are satisfied with your progress. D, veil grows thinner each time you are reborn. And as we know, Chad's veil was very thin. As a matter of fact, according to Melanie, his veil was actually so thin, it was ripped and it was always open.
He often said that it was like the veil was open when he had his near-death experiences. So he often said that veil was open all the time. So he had this way of seeing things that Lori and I didn't have that we didn't have that gift of seeing.
E, multiple sealings possible, but males can choose one true spouse or have many. Number 2 is translation. Whoa, what if I did a collaboration with Reynolds Wrap to create? Yeah, right. Crazier things have happened. Crazier things have happened. People have joined cults and killed their children. It's kind of... We know that Lori believed that she was a translated being, so keep that in mind when I read this. Number 2, translation. A, translated beings cannot die, cannot reproduce, do not need sleep or food, and do not feel the sorrow of the world. Interesting, maybe they don't even feel the sorrow of the death of their children and spouses. Injury is possible, but healing is accelerated and it's never fatal. Done in multiple phases/tests, usually lasting 3 days. Upon completing the last phase, the Lord appears to the translated. Physical. 1. Can be any physical ailment from sexual desire to disease to severe fatigue. Emotional. Any emotional/mental ailment. Spiritual. A great test of faith, a time of darkness and doubt. Sexual, ? Possible new phase, discovered as husband and wife become more united sexually, possibly increasing power/vibration. So I'm pretty sure Chad and Lori, once they were married and they became more united sexually, which, Chad and C. There are 50 dark translated humans. Detectives Hope and Hermosillo have been identified as such. Work under the direction of Satan, Lucifer, and Cain. Number 3, stats. The first is vibration, indication of one's spiritual strength. 2, above certain level, 1000 ? Garments are no longer necessary. And it is at this moment that I need to stop and tell you something. When I was watching Chad's preliminary hearing, there was a moment when Detective Hermosillo was talking about the apartments, right?
Was there anything else of interest to you in searching those apartments?
Yes.
What was that?
The apartments appeared to be lived in. There was food in the refrigerator, food in the pantry, furniture. The only thing that was off in 175 was it appeared that there was no clothes. Everything had been taken off the hangers and there was no clothes in the dresser drawers.
So you see the part where he says there were no clothes? Okay. Now when I heard this, the first thing I thought about was this statement. I'll read it to you again. Under stats and vibration, number 2, above a certain level, 1000. So if your vibration is so high, garments are no longer necessary. Could it be, and as we know, we're in the reaching zone, could it be that Lori and Alex, because you know, some people think that there's a weird situation going on there, but anyway, could it be that they were no clothes there because they were not wearing garments because their vibration was so high that they didn't need them anymore? I mean, I know it's crazy, I know, but hello, have you looked at this case? This case is crazy. And so am I. Moving on. Okay, so B, libido, 1 to 100, and then indication of sex drive. Okay, so my understanding is that they rank somebody's libido 1 to 100. Okay, and I don't want to know any more about that, so we're going to go to number C, or not number C, letter C. Trust level, indication of how much someone can be trusted. Okay, that sounds very culty. The fact that there's a ranking for that, I could see them like using that, like, oh, your trust level numbers are dropping. And then D, the final stat is light/dark percentage, and we know all about this, unfortunately, and it is an indication of how much light and darkness dwell in one's body. But let's move on to number 4, zombies. All right, are we ready? Because this is weird. A, human bodies that have had their original spirits forced from them and have been possessed by either a demon, original third of the heavenly host who followed Lucifer, disembodied spirit, once living human spirits who have chosen not to be reborn into another probation, or A, worm/slug creature controlled by Lucifer that enters the body to control the host. Spirits can be pushed from their bodies during traumatic events or deadly injury. Spirits pushed out are trapped in limbo as the body they're tied to is still living but cannot be occupied by them anymore. As we know, this was the justification for what they did to pretty much everybody around them who happened to die. So then it says spirits trapped in limbo cannot progress to a new mortal life and cannot re-enter their existing body. The only way to move forward is to await the death of their current possessed body. Let's go to number 5, teleportation. When translated beings are needed, they may, with the Lord's permission, teleport to the necessary location to perform their assigned duties, but only with the Lord's permission. Okay, number 6, dark and light portals.
You would have been supported if you had not opened dark portals and dark junk.
A, physical objects all around us have ties to the spiritual world and can open portals/gateways of both light and darkness through which light and dark entities may pass. Church of the Firstborn and the 144,000. The Church of the Firstborn is a higher organization and God's church in its truest form on earth. The mysteries of God are revealed to those who have become part of it. Terrestrial blessings and locations begin to be revealed to members. Doctrines add to, but do not replace, those of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Prophet of the Mormon Church presides over the general congregation, while others are called specifically to run the Church of the Firstborn. Multiple branches throughout the world. The 144,000 are called to bring to pass the signs of the second coming of Christ. Multiple groups specializing in different powers and activities. Chad and Lori's group specializes in healing and music.
We hear that Lori spends a lot of her time reading the scriptures in jail and singing hymns.
They did believe that they were the head of the 144,000. They believed that was what their assignment was. So I guess in some sense you could say that they were trying to find people that would fit that group.
Did you feel, or did they make you feel special or chosen as they're teaching you these things, that you are one of the elect and you need to be with us?
Yep.
Did you gradually come to really believe that and say, yeah, I am one of the chosen ones?
To some level. Not 100%, but to some level. Mm-hmm.
C, patriarchal order of the Holy Melchizedek Priesthood. Melchizedek. I'm so sorry that I'm saying that wrong. I need to figure out how to pronounce that. One moment.
As the story goes, Shem, the Melchizedek, Shem, killed Nimrod.
Melchizedek.
And as we sit side by side as Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthood holders.
Oh, they say it 2 different ways. Okay, so this is a priesthood that was bestowed to Chad, right, by Peter, James, and John. But listen to what Melanie Gibbs says about this priesthood in the secret phone call.
You know, when you get the priesthood, that's Peter, James, and John shows up, and then he confirms all of those in the circle that are to get it, and everybody's a witness of that. Everybody's a witness that the pattern is in the scriptures. There's no witness that you ever received what you think you received. Nobody has seen that but you. He wasn't alone. There was a witness for them. There was no witness. Anybody's never seen what you've seen or experienced what you've seen. That is your own witness, but nobody's had that.
No, God knows it, and I will never deny it. For my soul would be at stake if I did. So you can say it didn't happen to me, Mel, but if I say it, then I am accountable. You didn't witness it.
Priesthood keys and authority bestowed on women. Women may perform all the same blessings and ordinances as men. Okay, so this is why I think Lori really loved this idea. I think that Chad, elevated her in a very patriarchal faith. He elevated her in ways that maybe the traditional way would not have, and I think that's something that she liked. Let's continue to number 8, which is the dark church and priesthood section. A, Satan is God's exact opposite. B, Lucifer has a body, was once an apostle, and fell. C, Cain was the first dark being to be translated in this creation and walks the earth with 50 dark translated beings to prevent/delay the Lord's second coming. I remembered something from this statement, which is Chad mentions dark Cain in the secret phone call.
I don't know what else to say.
Stand Christ when he comes again, and he's coming soon, and we will all stand there, and you will know at that point that he has supported me and has supported me the whole time, and I have not been deceived.
I just want to testify that I know Tammy does. And the conspiracy theories, my sister-in-law's right behind it all, and I hope that you're not being influenced by that dark Cain.
To me, this is why I think that this statement is so important, because Ian Pawlowski is the only insider account that we have on what they believed, what they thought. Everybody else who was talking, whether it's Melanie Pawlowski or Melanie Gibb, they're downplaying or they're explaining it, but they're like, no, we didn't believe this and that. But that secret phone call and this insider account shows just how insane the beliefs were, and that Ian Pawlowski was telling the truth when he wrote this. All right, let's continue. Spiritual gifts/powers. People can manipulate the elements to do the Lord's will and bring to pass signs of his second coming. Remember this, because later on I'm going to read you about Alex Cox and Zulema preparing earthquakes, right? He's going to mention that. And over here it says people can manipulate the elements, like natural elements, like an earthquake, for example, okay, to do the Lord's will and bring to pass the second coming. So like to speed it up, I'm guessing. So, and remember how they were predicting this earthquake that was going to happen? Whew, are you still with me? Are you still with me? Okay, please hold on. Moving on. Okay, so number 10. If you can imagine it, it is real. Every fantastic idea is a reality somewhere. Magic, wizards, sorcerers, witches, etc. Spells and curses in Harry Potter are real and require great focus will to use. Supernatural creatures, dragons, giants, fairies, centaurs, etc. Okay? Totally makes sense, and I think that this is a very, very restrained belief. 11. Spiritual weapons. Dark and light weapons. Weapons that cannot be perceived by celestial beings that injure and scar the spirit. Cords. Ties to people and things, both light and dark, that influence us. And now we go to number C. Well, number C. I keep saying number and then a letter. Now we go to C. Spiritual healing. Now, just to remind you, we know that Lori and Chad are in charge of healing, right? That's their commission. And they're in charge of getting rid of the zombies.
So it was their commission, though, to get rid of all the zombies.
Remember, somebody who's possessed by zombie, they're suffering. They need to be healed from that possession. Okay? Spiritual healing. healing malachite solution / balm. Malachite is said to have healing properties, administered by calling on it in a blessing. If you don't know, I have several videos on my theory. I suspect that Tammy and Alex Cox and maybe even Joseph Ryan and who knows were possibly, maybe poisoned by malachite, and I go into why I think that, and Lori's malachite ring and the side effects of it and the autopsy results.
Well, the first thing I want to start with, Melanie and Ian, is your reaction to the autopsy results, which came out just the other day concerning your uncle. Were you guys surprised at all? What did you think when you heard the news?
It was relieving, but we weren't surprised. We knew that it would be natural causes. We had no reason to think anything otherwise.
There's going to be people watching that still don't believe those results or say there's something more here. What do you say to them?
Ian made a bad joke, like, well, did they test for all the invisible poisons? Like it's people will still think whatever speculation or rumors or whatever they want to believe, even when it's right in front of their face. And I was talking about this too. I was like, you know, when Tylee and JJ show up, you know, again, and you're here again, I don't know if people would even believe it. They'd still...
Whatever, I'll link it below. This next part, I really want you guys to bear with me and listen to, because I think it doesn't get enough attention. And that is because it's the paragraph section at the end of the statement. I think we got a little distracted by all this kooky stuff. Allow me to read this to you. When Melanie began sharing all of these things with me, I tried to keep an open mind. I'd only met her 4 days previous, but felt very comfortable around her. I believe there is more to the gospel than what I have seen so far. But I never thought it would sound like this. The ideas seemed harmless at first, and she sounded pretty certain of some of them. She talked about how she'd learned some of these things in the temple and others from Chad and Lori.
These things that Lori and Chad had told you, or were you telling Ian just to kind of get it off your chest and say, I don't know what to think?
Lori and Chad did not tell me most of those things in the document. Those were fears I was hearing from other people.
So Melanie, go ahead, Melanie.
I was going to say, I think it's important to understand where some of these things come from. So initially, when Charles filed for divorce with Lori, he brought a document over to my home. And that's the first time I saw these stats, if you will.
But Ian is saying right here, she talked about how she'd learned some of these things in the temple and others from Chad and Lori. Upon first meeting Chad and Lori, I didn't get a bad impression of them, but they did seem different. I didn't think anything of that, as I feel like that's a fairly normal feeling to experience. I didn't give them much thought, as they said they were planning on taking off and that I'd be taking the reins concerning care of Melanie. So they must have been taking care of Melanie if he's taking the reins, right? They said they'd be going to Hawaii and invited me to come visit sometime. Later, Melanie explained porting and that they could travel there by that method. Okay. This is what I'm talking about with these people that try to act like they didn't have these beliefs. Again, I'll repeat myself. Later, Melanie explained porting, quote, and that they could travel there by that method. Okay, so these people are out here believing that they can port over to Hawaii to visit Lori and Chad, or Lori and Chad are porting, or I don't know. There's more. There's actually more. The first time hearing all of these new beliefs was a jolt. I was looking for someone spiritual, but this was a leap beyond that into concerning territory. I had fears and doubts, but I trusted Melanie and wanted to give her a fair chance. So I continued to listen and ask questions in hopes that it would click for me. It never did. There were fun and exciting ideas, but it felt like many of them were ripped straight out of a Dungeons and Dragons manual. Between the stats, accounts of dark and light weapons, and words spoken in blessings, it sounded like someone had created a tabletop RPG based on the Bible. RPG is role-playing game. My brother was huge into Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm quite familiar. While living something like that appealed to me, I couldn't find anything to confirm it as I prayed and asked. I figured anyone called to something like this would struggle, but how else would they be made aware of things like this? I continued to try to keep an open mind and proceed with caution. Melanie began to share that she feared for the lives of 2 of her children based on a dream she'd had where they came to her. They brought her tidings of great joy. Her daughter thanked her for allowing her the freedom to use her agency until the end. This concerned me and made my heart ache for her. I felt there was no way anything could have happened without people finding out. We married faster than any sane couple would, but we both felt it was right. On our wedding night, she began to elaborate on the ideas she'd shared earlier about her children coming to her. She explained zombies and her fears about what Chad and Lori stated concerning the original spirits being caught in limbo until the body's death. She stated that Brandon had been possessed by a demon or other dark entity sometime after June of this year. Hold up, wait a minute. She is telling her new husband that her previous husband was a dark entity. And remember, in my video about all the suspicious things about Melanie P, I show the email that was sent saying that he was dark all the way back before Melanie P even filed for divorce against Brandon. Chad was saying that he was dark. Now she's divorced him and she's married to a new guy, and she's still saying that he is dark. And we know there was an attempt on his life. Coinkydink? I don't think. She was told either through revelation or by Chad that something would happen to him, that something needed to happen to him in order for his spirit to progress and for the Lord's plan to continue. She didn't take well to the idea of her husband dying as part of the Lord's plan, but didn't think action would be taken by anyone. She still loves Brandon and would never wish any ill on him. It just sounded to her like it would be something that happened on its own when it was his time. I find it so interesting because in the interview that she did, she said that she didn't even believe that this shooting could have happened.
I had my dad sending me threatening messages saying things about the shooting and that Brandon Boudreaux's claiming, and I never even know, I still to this day don't know if this shooting actually happened or who did this.
And now here she's showing concern that something could have happened to him and that they're behind it. See, if it wasn't for Ian saying this, we would have never known. This is where things started becoming concerning to me. She shared the idea that Chad and Lori could have directed Al to take a shot at Brandon. It wasn't anything she was sure about. The concern began when she was called into the Gilbert PD and asked about Chad, Lori, and Alex after the attempt on Brandon's life. She later was given the impression that the bullet needed to have moved 5 inches so as not to hit Brandon. Initially, to me, it sounded like this was told to her by Chad. I just thought of a theory. Could it be that, let's say Melanie didn't know. Let's say that Melanie was completely in the dark about Brandon Boudreaux's, the attempt on him. That would mean that possibly, allegedly, Chad, put the idea in Lori's head. Lori put the idea in Alex and Melanie's head. Alex, we know, would do that. And so maybe they thought that if they did get rid of him and Melanie got the life insurance payout, maybe they thought that they could manipulate Melanie or somehow get access to that money through Melanie. It's possible, because they moved to Idaho, she moved to Idaho. She's going along with them, so maybe if she did come into $1 million, they could get some of that money too. Maybe, I don't know, just a theory. The discussion moved to Chad and Lori's missing children. At the time, only JJ was counted as missing, and the Rexburg PD had conducted raids on Melanie's apartment along with Al's. Melanie had been told by Chad and Lori that their children had been possessed and had become zombies. She shared concerns that she's been told Brandon needed to die, and that may indicate that Tylee and JJ needed to die as well. She told me that she was worried that Al may have had to, quote, take care, end quote, of the kids. She explained that Al had great faith and never wavered in his trust in the Lord. No task would be too difficult or great for him. When I asked for clarification, she restated her concern verbatim. At that point, I became severely worried, but told myself there's no way I just married into a situation so sinister. I spent the next 2 days trying to justify my actions and reassure myself that everything was fine, but I couldn't get to that point. My ex-wife Natalie had been asking for Melanie's name so she can check her out on social media and get an idea of who she is. Melanie had been adamant that I not share her full name with anyone for fear that Brandon may locate and harass her. I couldn't justify that and eventually gave Natalie Melanie's full name. On Tuesday, December 2nd, I got a call from my mother. She'd just gotten off the phone with Natalie. When we divorced, Natalie made a point to cut herself off from my entire family and hadn't spoken to any of them for at least 8 months. She had made as little contact with me as possible, but hadn't been unkind since the initial conflict of the divorce. My mother told me she just received a video call from Natalie. Natalie was terrified. She'd managed to reach Brandon through his business and heard of his side things. She'd been told Melanie was in a cult and that she had tried to have him killed. While I didn't and still don't believe that she had anything to do with his attempted murder, I was still terrified at the possibility. The next morning on my way to work, Natalie called and we were discussing how to handle this in order to keep our kids safe. She told me she'd be going in to meet with the police. I told her I'd go along and lay out everything I understand. I saw 2 possibilities. The first was Melanie isn't who I thought she was and I keep myself and my family out of a dangerous situation. The second was that Melanie has been taken advantage of and I'm going to get her out of a messy situation and healed. When meeting with the police, I intended to share things as I understood. Detectives Hope and Hermosillo were present along with an FBI agent named Ricky. I've since shared all my concerns with Melanie and have gotten clarification on some of them. What I shared with the police were the ideas that Chad, Lori, and Alex may have planned shooting at Brandon and that Tylee and JJ may be in serious danger if Melanie's fears have any validity, and of course we know they absolutely do. If shooting at Brandon was indeed based on the idea that he was no longer actually Brandon and needed to die as part of the Lord's plan, then the kids' lives could be forfeit based on the idea that they're not really Tylee and JJ anymore. I shared that Melanie had concerns about them participating in the shooting and was against anyone trying to hurt him. She couldn't see them doing these things, but she also knew they would follow the Lord's will as they saw it. I shared ideas about earthquakes being prepared in Salt Lake City and that it was believed that there would be a time when the quakes hit that many possessions would occur there due to the high number of injured there would be. Such a thing would be a huge threat to God's plan and would need to be dealt with directly. Al and Zulema had stayed in Las Vegas and were, quote, preparing earthquakes, end quote. At the time, I spoke with police. I shared concerns for the safety of my kids and Natalie. I offered to help in any way I can. I then allowed them to pull data from my phone. So let's stop for a second, right? Al and Zulema had stayed in Las Vegas and were preparing earthquakes. Now, let's go to the earlier section that I read you and told you to remember, spiritual gifts and powers. People can manipulate the elements to do the Lord's will and bring to pass signs of his second coming. Could that be what we see here, which is preparing earthquakes? Okay, let's continue on. I met with them again the following afternoon and restated what I knew for a few other detectives, Lieutenant Ball and another FBI agent named Travis. They shared some mild concern about me potentially spying for Chad and Lori. I explained that I was there because I was concerned primarily for the safety of my kids and that I wanted to get Melanie out of this if possible. They gave me a recording device that looked like a thumb drive on a keychain. My plan was to record anything I thought could help locate Tylee and JJ, locate Chad and Lori, and understand what happened when Brandon was shot at. If I thought Chad and Lori were going to be calling, I'd turn on the recorder and just let it run until they'd hung up. I don't feel that anything substantial was recorded, as Chad and Lori never talked about the kids or their location, of course, because they know what they're doing. Most of the conversations consisted of everyone commiserating about the current circumstances, discussing religious ideas, and just catching up. In addition to the recordings, I would talk with Ricky, and he'd let me know about things that may come up in conversation. Now remember, Ricky is the FBI agent. He was never specific, but would give me enough information for me to know when it came up. These tips turned into Tammy's body being exhumed and Al's passing. Now remember, the Tammy's body being exhumed and Al's passing also happened after the secret phone call that Melanie recorded and gave to police. It's possible that Ian was not aware of this secret phone call, and so he could have made this connection when in fact it happened because of the secret phone call. Have I lost you guys? I'm losing myself in this process. Okay. On December 19th, Detective Hermosillo contacted me and told me they had another warrant for Al's apartment next door. He asked if I'd give them the code to the garage so they wouldn't have to break in the door. I shared the code. I didn't see any reason not to. They went in with a forensics team and looked for any evidence of JJ having been there. Melanie saw them there and spent the afternoon at my apartment. Interesting. That night I went to the apartment and looked around to see what they had been doing or if they'd taken anything. I also wanted to see the warrants to understand what they'd been looking for. After looking around, I went to see Melanie at my apartment. I finally broke down and told her that I'd spoken with police and that I don't believe any of this. I didn't know how she would react, but I couldn't hang on to the stress anymore. Of course she was hurt, feeling betrayed, but she reassured me that she loves me and that she understands why I did it. At that time, I didn't share that I'd been recording anything. I wasn't sure if we'd hear from Chad and Lori again. Over the following week, we had discussions on our situations and I came to understand things a little better. She was legitimately afraid of the ideas I'd shared with police and FBI, but they weren't anything that she had proof of. As I've spoken with her and dug into the details, I've come to believe that she truly doesn't know anything about who shot at Brandon or where the kids have gone. This part is sad and a little bit frustrating to read. It shows how much Ian believed Melanie, because now towards the end of the document, you can see him sort of like believing what Melanie's saying and doubting all the things that he thought. Listen, I'm worried that I jumped the gun and have sent the authorities on yet another wild goose chase, along with prompting them to light up the national media with pieces of what I shared. My intent was to protect my family and help solve the case of the kids' disappearance. Sorry, that's my dogs. Where was I? My intent was protect my family and help solve the case of the kids' disappearance. She's just gonna bark. We're just gonna let her bark. She's a German Shepherd. That's what they do. My intent was to protect my family and help solve the case of the kids' disappearance, not smear anyone in the public eye. I certainly didn't want to give Brandon any ammo to hurt Melanie any more than he already has. I feel like Ian Pawlowski has such an internal conflict about the situation. I still have my doubts. Primarily, why not turn to the police first instead of disappearing if you claim your life is in danger? Why leave your innocent niece here to clean up the mess and encourage her not to cooperate with the authorities? Why encourage her not to fight for her kids? Interesting. Her ex-husband now has temporary sole custody as a result. Why not simply provide proof that the kids are okay and put an end to this insanity? Isn't it odd that the two detectives assigned to your case happen to be two of the Cain's Dark 50? Everyone trying to do their job and save these kids are either evil or deceived. Your kids are missing and it doesn't come up once during a handful of lengthy conversations. There are so many more that I have. I don't ever want to have anything to do with those two after this. Wow. Melanie has been put through the ringer because of their paranoia. Not their paranoia, because of their murderous ways, and now is in the hot seat because I went to the police and tried to help. I know she's done nothing wrong and I want her free from this. I will no longer openly cooperate with the police or the FBI, but I will through a lawyer. My final straw was when I received a call on Friday from Ricky where he threatened charges of lying to a federal officer and or being an accessory in the disappearance of Tylee and JJ because Melanie couldn't clearly answer questions about the religious aspects of the investigation. Yeah, we know that. Melanie can't clearly answer any questions. Did you see my video on her where she ran around a million different hoops to avoid answering a simple yes or no question? After I shared my doubts with her, her world shattered. She couldn't answer those questions because she doesn't know what she believes about those things anymore. There was so much information dumped on her by Chad and Lori that she can't remember what she learned from them. from the podcast she listens to or on her own. A 20-year-old veteran FBI agent throwing a hissy fit after one shaky interview tells me all I need to know about how they want to handle this. She didn't trust authorities before because of how poorly the AF treated her when she went to pick up her kids with a court order in hand. This is the incident where she got arrested. And that's it. That's the end of Ian Pawlowski's statement. So now I have a question to ask you guys, and that is, what do you guys think? Please, I would love to know, because I don't know. At this point, I'm so in it, I can't even see straight. Sometimes I feel like I need to like push back. I think I might take a break from this case for like one video, maybe two, depending on how I feel. I just need a breather from it, just a little bit. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.